And joining us today to talk about what he'll ask the Fed chairman, Senator Ken Conrad, chairman of the Budget Committee. Senator, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Obviously, these jobs numbers are going to color the conversation in some way. How do you think they'll do that?
You know, frankly, I think these job numbers are about what we expected, a little below. But if you look at the trend, pretty much on track. You know, I think this tells us what most of us know, that this is still a fragile economy. We've got 1 in every 6 workers in this country underemployed or unemployed. So the strategy, both fiscally in terms of monetary policy, has to be very carefully calibrated, because all of us know we're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar we spend. That has to be addressed because we're on an unsustainable course. It's critically important that we adopt a plan to deal with our debt. I believe we should adopt that plan this year, but we've got to be careful on how it's phased in. And I expect that we'll hear that from the chairman this morning.
Do you want the conversation today to be focused around broad economic data, the Fed's policy of quantitative easing, or the budget? I mean, which way do you want to take it?
Well, this is the Budget Committee, and I'm the Budget Committee chairman.
Yeah.
And I've invited the chairman because it's very important that we talk about the fiscal and monetary issues that inform the budget decisions that we make.
There's been a lot of chatter about the debt ceiling and the degree to which that's going to be used as a cudgel to get some spending cuts. Now there's speculation about maybe Congress will give us some short-term extensions, which would give deficit hawks multiple opportunities to demand some spending cuts. Is that a likely scenario?
I think it may well be. Look, what's critically important is that we have a comprehensive long-term plan to deal with deficits and debt. We are on a course that is simply unsustainable, and it needs to be addressed. But it is also the case that we have got to be careful with respect to the timing. We can't pivot too soon, or we jeopardize this recovery that is just gaining strength. So, you know, it's a delicate matter of when do we impose the fiscal discipline that we all know has to happen.
You know, Senator, it seems like things come back to you. And things you said early on eventually come to pass. I just remind you of a couple of things. Public option. We had to argue, you and your party had to argue for a year about the public option. You said we're not going to have one. We didn't have one. Extension on the high-end tax cuts. You and your party, oh my God, the far left and what went down with when that finally happened. You said we should do it. We did that. Deficit Commission, tough choice. You voted yes. You're one of the guys that voted yes. Why don't you just tell them that you're in charge, you lead, and let's do something and put the Deficit Commission's findings into effect. Take control there, Senator, would you?
Joe, you're very kind. Look, I believe very, very strongly, as you know, that we have to put in place a long-term deficit plan. I think the Commission did a very commendable job. I think it's interesting that you had 11 of the 18 support it, 5 Democrats, 5 Republicans, and 1 independent. So, you know, I think that does tell us that it is possible to reach across the aisle to do something that's important for the country. I believe very strongly that we must move in the direction of what the Commission has recommended.
Well, the president, you know, Bill Daley, others, it would seem to indicate that it was his commission. He's probably on board with you. You could talk him into it. Who do we got to convince?
Well, the left and the right. Look, you've got the left that really doesn't want to touch entitlements, Social Security and Medicare. You have the right that doesn't want to touch revenue. Both of them have to acknowledge the hard reality when you're borrowing 40 cents of every dollar you spend, when revenue is the lowest it's been as a share of the economy in 60 years, and spending as a share of the economy is the highest it's been in 60 years, we've got to work both sides of that equation. And it's so important that we begin that process this year, and I hope the chairman of the Federal Reserve confirms that view this morning.
Senator, I agree with basically everything you said, but I think it comes down to this. Everybody agrees there should be fiscal consolidation. It should happen soon. And the question is how. okay? And who is going to step up and be the first to say we have to cut back in Medicare? Who's going to be the first to say that we need to raise age limits for Social Security, et cetera? Who's going to take the leadership? And don't you have to get beyond these generalities, yes, and, you know, timing is important, and put on the table something specific? And I agree with Joe. Why don't you just put on the table what the fiscal deficit panel had? That hurts everybody. It must be good.
Everybody hates it.
Well, look, we've done that. I supported the commission report that called for specifically $4 trillion in debt reduction, and very specifically laid out tax reform to broaden the base, lower the rates, make America more competitive, specific spending cuts, specific reforms to Social Security. So 11 of us have already stood up. We voted aye when our names were called, and I am pushing right now to get the administration to the table for a negotiation along the lines of what the commission has recommended, because at the end of the day, the administration has got to be at the table.
Senator, the one question, though, is everybody's going to have to give something up, something that is maybe near and dear to them, something that they may believe in very much. And while I agree with everything you've said, what about when it comes to the corn question, ethanol? Would you be willing to give up your stance on that and say that we should cut funding to that just because everybody is going to have to suffer equally across the table?
Well, if you look at the commission report, we cut agriculture by a very significant amount, $10 billion on a $140 billion base. So everything is on the table. Every part of the budget is going to have to contribute, including defense. I was delighted to see the Secretary of Defense come forward yesterday and put on the table very substantial cuts in the tens of billions of dollars, because every part of this budget is going to have to contribute.
Why can't every cabinet chief be like Secretary Gates? Or is there just so much to cut in defense that he's got some low-hanging fruit?
Well, there is low-hanging fruit there, as you know. The testimony before the commission was really quite striking with respect to defense. 51% of all federal workers are at the Department of Defense. That doesn't count the contractors. When we asked them how many contractors do they have at the Department of Defense, they told us they could not tell us. When we asked them what is the range, they said between 1 and 9 million. That is a broad range.
Well, at least it's narrower than 1 to 10 million, I guess. Got to start somewhere. We'll be watching the hearing closely, Senator. Thanks for your time in advance.
You bet.
We'll see you next time. Senator Ken Conrad.